all framed up. I think this looks pretty good. Welcome to the Putback presented by 888 Casino. Sign up with 888 Casino today and get $20 in free play. No deposit necessary, New Jersey only. I'm Ian Begley here with Chris Williamson. Chris, what do we have for the baseline this week?
Well, Ian, at this point, everybody's pretty much heard, about Chris Haynes' report on Damian Lillard being frustrated in Portland, potentially wanting out. But you have some new reporting specifically on the Knicks side. What can you tell us about the latest with that?
Yeah, so the Knicks, I think for a while now, have been kind of preparing for this scenario. Members of the organization have kind of been doing their due diligence on the idea that Lillard may ask out. So the sense that I get is they feel prepared if and when that situation arises. We're not there yet, but according to Chris Haynes' report, we may be there soon. It's interesting to note the discord between Lillard and the Blazers at the moment, according to Haynes. One element here that I've heard is with Lillard and GM Neil O'Shea, they have not totally seen eye to eye over the course of Lillard's tenure in Portland. A couple players around the league have kind of jokingly said, if you like Portland, if you like being in Portland, don't get close to Dame because you may get moved. And I think over the course of Lillard's tenure, you've seen a couple players that he's been close with not remain on that roster in Portland, whether it's via trade or signing somewhere else, free agency. So I wonder if that's at play here. But nonetheless, if this thing boils to a point where Damian Lillard is asking for a trade, members of the Knicks organization do feel prepared. It's going to take a heavy package to extract Lillard from Portland. So we'll see where this thing goes from here.
This week's guest is Matt Sullivan, author of Can't Knock the Hustle, Inside the Season of Protest, Pandemic, and Progress with the Brooklyn Nets Superstars of Tomorrow, in stores now, wherever you get your books. One of the passages from your book spoke about, KD's father, Wayne Pratt, and the phone call that he had, with, Steve Mills and Scott Perry.
I think we all know that guys of that caliber are texting with each other, player to player, whether the free agency window is officially open or not. The NBA, was going to crack down on tampering in 2019 when these guys were coming, so they were being careful, right? Even though KD and Kyrie, as I report, had really kind of sort of decided to team up over a dinner at Kyrie's place in Boston back in January 2019 before the Zapruder tape of 2 max slots, right? and so KD had essentially chosen Brooklyn while he was still playing in the finals with the Warriors before the Achilles tear. So I think the Knicks, desperate as always, right, kind of came in, swooped in at the last minute. Maybe they thought they could find an opportunity in the Achilles tear to make him reconsider. And so the Knicks, desperate as ever, get KD's dad on the phone. He's a lifelong Knicks fan. Like we all know, Rich Kleiman, KD's guy, is a lifelong Knicks fan. And KD's kind of texts his dad at the last minute, what you think about Brooklyn. And KD's dad, having been on this kind of video chat with Scott and Steve, they get Wayne on, they try to convince him, and Wayne is then trying to get in KD's, text at the last minute saying, the Knicks is Mecca. If you want to do it big. If you want to be a New Yorker, be a Knick. And KD, I think we've all learned, didn't really want to save Mecca. He didn't want to, go to Broadway and have to be that guy. He's a pure hooper, and he wants to be insulated in Nets world, the black and white, Jay-Z. The Nets had been trying to recruit him since they traded for KG and Paul Pierce and Jason Terry back in the day. Former Nets GM Billy King told me that trade was meant to lure KD in 2016. So the Nets had been playing a long con. The Knicks, as ever, played a desperate last-minute heave.
They certainly did, and there are people over there who still felt that if Durant hadn't gotten hurt in the finals, that they could have gotten him, and they were hopeful.
Wishful thinking.
Yeah, even to the end that with Kyrie going to Brooklyn, maybe they could try to get Durant to New York. Obviously, it did not happen that way. Obviously, it was wishful thinking, and here they are a few years later. Shawn Farmer has trained players at all levels of the game, NBA, overseas, college, high school. So we asked him to come in to break down specific aspects of some of the young Knicks players' games and what that might look like going forward into next season.
The thing that comes to mind off the video and film that I've watched as a kid, and I went all the way back to his Kentucky days, he has perfected that 1 foot unorthodox style of floating, which it gives him a big time advantage. And I've always said is every elite guard has to have a floater game, and you have to be able to do it in a variety of ways. He can do that. I mean, it is impressive when you look at the film on this kid, that the angles that he takes, the 45-degree angles, and him getting downhill, getting to the paint. But also keep in mind, this kid studied films on rotational bigs. And what I mean by that is, for those who don't understand, guys that are shot blockers and guys that rotate over to take the charge. He studies film because he knows, like, I think it's predetermined which floater he's going to use, which predominantly is the 1-foot floater. And I've seen him on some occasions use the 2-foot floater, which keeps him from getting a charge called against them. Moving forward, I think he's up there in the top 3 with Steph and with Trae Young, top 3 guys that are good with their floaters.
And Shawn, based on what you've seen on tape, the angles that Immanuel Quickley is taking, where he's going off 1 foot, 2 feet, is there another progression with this floater that you could see him taking in the coming years that could make it more effective? What do you see there?
Well, it's already effective. It keeps you off balance. You don't know if he's going to lob it. You don't know if he's going to float it. I mean, it's just a guessing game for those guys, those big guys. It's really frustrating.
And Shawn, what does he do to keep defenders guessing or off balance as he gets into that floater, or as you said earlier, it might be a lob? How does he keep people guessing if they know that that's a part of his arsenal and something that he leans on?
Along with him being creative with this floater is the patience and the poise. I mean, he keeps the same look all the time when he got the ball in his hand. So you don't know what he's going to do because he's so crafty with it. He's very methodical, and that's what keeps people guessing, because he keeps the same facial expression. In other words, he gets what he wants when he attacks and get to the paint area. He gets what he wants.
So I saw something on Twitter that I wanted to ask you about. You wrote that you wanted to clear up some Kyrie trade stuff, more like grumblings than rumblings from Nets management. Nets are not going to trade Kyrie Irving. I don't think the Nets would ever trade Kyrie Irving, unless he's at the tail end of his deal and they're at the tail end of a run, or certainly not right now. It wouldn't make any sense. But you made reference to him having a heady influence within the organization. What do you know about that? What did you learn about that through the course of reporting for your book?
Ian, I think you and I both know that the Nets organization, in terms of the front office brass, is about as tough to crack as the Kremlin. But it's interesting when you hear a bit of that grumbling, right? And Kyrie, KD, now James, obviously control so much of this franchise. Joe Tsai, a worldwide billionaire, really takes his cues from them. So to hear that there was just a little more frustration than usual with Kai, it sent up some flares, I thought. And look, Shawn is a great GM. It was just surprising to hear that after what was really an extended absence for Kyrie this year. It's been described to me as kind of a mental, emotional, and spiritual leave, kind of mixed in with paternity leave, the lack of charges in Jacob Blake shooting, and really the Capitol riot kind of sent him to take a few days off, which he's been known to do. I think it was the maskless video party, the video of the maskless party with his family that extended that quote unquote leave, pause, I think he called it. It didn't leave a great taste in the mouth with management, with ownership. And so, maybe it's just a signal to Kyrie that he's got to buckle down this year, and the big three's really got to get out there without too much of that pause, even though they'll always let Kai be Kai.
Yeah, and Kyrie's definitely a nuanced and very complicated individual, but his heart is always, in the right place. One of the other things that you touched on in your book is about, the boycott, the national anthem boycott that KD and Kyrie were on during the season. And I didn't, really know anything about it. How did it go under the radar for so long?
Well, I think this is why a lot of guys connected with me over the book, even before the George Floyd and Breonna Taylor kind of movement over the summer. I have a lot of experience investigating police killings in America, and I think I was just looking out for it. I mean, nobody saw Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf kind of tying his shoes or staying back in the locker room back in the mid-90s until a reporter did. Kaepernick was kind of just doing his own thing until a reporter noticed and asked him about it. I don't think these guys necessarily wanted to be noticed. It's a private decision. They're not coming out to have any kind of Kaepernick moment. But after the Capitol riot, they started not being out there. You know, after the Jacob Blake charges, never happened. After, you know, Kyrie went on this leave, he comes back and he'll start kind of 10 minutes before tip-off. You know, he'll slip out of layup lines, go through the tunnel. A minute later, KD just strides across the whole court past the bench, and he dips out. I think that's just what I've had my eyes out for, are things that the average sports reporter didn't, and that's why Begley and I are always asking the hard questions at the Nets press conference.
For Matt, Shawn, and Chris, I'm Ian. That's it for this episode of the Putback, presented by 888 Casino. We'll see you next week, everybody.
Who is the most untouchable Knicks player in a Damian Lillard trade? That's the subject of this week's SNY Fan Choice, presented by 888 Casino. Sign up to 888 Casino today and get $20 in free play. No deposit necessary. New Jersey only.